Amar Shmuel.
And isn't it true that if a person comes out of prison, he can take a haircut on Chalamod too? Or if he comes in from Yam Suf, he didn't have a chance, is he allowed to take a haircut on Chalamod? If
So
he comes out,
normally
yeah,
we're machmir that we don't. You should have done it before Yontif.
yeah, but if he comes out of prison,
so for a regular person, if you didn't do it before Yontif, you're not allowed to do it. Now I don't know if it's a low plug and they answered it for everybody, but if he had no opportunity to do it, he might be allowed to do it. That's gonna come up in later on, I think, in this Masechta.
okay, yeah.
Amar Shmuel Makabli ki boilas. You've hired Goyim to do work for a Jew. And they want to do the work on Shabbos. So betoch tchum aser. If it's within tchum Shabbos, where other Jews will see what's going on, you can't let them do for example, they know your property, and they've been hired to build a house, and they see them building a house on Shabbos, and it's your property. That's aser. Chutz l'tchum mutter. If it's beyond the tchum Shabbos, and other Jews don't go there, then it's permitted. It's only outside the tchum if it's not close to another city where there are Jews. Also usher. And even when there is no other city close by, there's no heter. Then it's permitted outside the tchum on Shabbos and Yontif because Jews are not going to be there. People travel Chol Moed, and Jews can end up.
Ernie,
Yes.
even if it's out of the tchum, the Jew cannot contract on Shabbos to be working even outside the tchum either.
No. Let's say kablanus means he has to finish the job. You don't tell him what days to work. He decides for himself when he's going to work.
Oh, okay. All right. Now I get it. So he didn't do it. He didn't do the contract on Shabbos. He told him before, right?
Now, if you gave him laundry a minute before Erev Shabbos, that's a problem we learned in Masechta Shabbos.
Okay.
But you could do it by laundry because people, it's not something that's recognizable what he's doing. But building a house with the tchum is also because of Sachshad that you told him to do it on Shabbos. You didn't tell him to do it on Shabbos. He decided to do it. It's all a gzeira because people, it's like a Mara sign. People will think. So Chol Moed, even outside of the tchum, is a problem because people travel there. Marzutra B'rei Rav Nachman banu le'apadna mekabel kibolos chutz l'tchum. Marzutra contracted with Goyim to build him a house outside the tchum, and they worked on Shabbos. Ikla Rav Safa Rav Huna bar China v'lo alu l'gavei. Later on, Rav Safa and Rav Huna didn't want to go into that house because they didn't want to use something that they thought was done by Isser. So I'm saying he himself, Marzutra, also didn't go into the house. What do you mean? What about the statement of Shmuel that if it's chutz l'tchum and this was chutz l'tchum, it's permitted? So the answer, Adam Choshev Shiny, he should have been makpid more because he is an Adam Choshev. Ikedi Amri, no, because he helped build the bricks. He put the straw on the bricks. So they weren't completely independent. He was part of it. That's why they asked her. Rav Chama Sharlo la'avungri de Beireish Kalusa, and Mevilu Avidita B'chol de Moed. Rav Huna permitted, or Rav Chama permitted the waiters in the house of the Rosh Galusa to do work on Chol Hamoed. Omar kiven the Ager Lokashkuli Sharshuri Hu Dikum Sharshaluhu. They're not getting paid. Waiters would get sort of food for the work that they did. So it's not like a malacha, it's not like a full malacha, like a schir poil. The less lanba. But we don't have this sister. During Chol Hamoed, you can contract work to be done after Chol Hamoed. But b'moed atzmo aser. And the Shulchan Aruch says, "Mutter limsor noch avodah b'moed." You can give a goy work on the Chol Moed. B'kablanos or b'schar, as long as he does it after Chol Moed. As long as there's a measure and count, like you would do during Chol. Klala shel davar. Kol shu oise. Kol shu mutter li oise b'atzmo. Armel anochri v'oise. Anything he can do himself, you can tell a goy to do. Kol she'ena oise ena armel anochri v'moed. Whatever he cannot do, he cannot tell a goy to do. You can contract with a goy to do it after Chol Hamoed. He can't measure, he can't weigh, count. Like in a, let's say you contract with him. Yeah, I'm going to do this work after Moed, but let me measure. No, you can't do the measuring on Chol Hamoed. If you were in the cattle business, you assisted the animals to mate. You're not allowed to do that Chol Hamoed. You couldn't do that to one of your Bechor animals.
But maybe that's a hefsed meruba.
We'll see. Right now, it's a blanket.
It's a havamina.
Right now, the halacha is you're not allowed to help in the ribui process with a behem on Chol Hamoed. It looks like work. And as a separate din, animals that are hugdish lekorban, and they have a mum, you cannot help with their ribua because it looks like you're working with them, and you're not allowed to work with psulei mukdashim.
But I see on the halacha breeding an animal on festival, right?
Ein marbiin. It says ein marbiin biyadayim behema b'moed. Yesh oimrim shechamoira. If it's a donkey,
and she's on heat.
If the donkey's in heat, that means the donkeys go into a period where it's dangerous. They have to, and there you could do it.
Right, that's what I'm saying. There could be a hefsid. Okay, yeah.
Let's see the Gemara. Right now, Tanya Yidich Ein Marbiim Be'em B'chol Shomai. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Chamoira Shetova, a chamora that's in estrus, that is demanding a male, Marbin Alei Zocher B'Shvil Shlot Titztane, because she'll cool off, and then, like Walter said, it's going to be a hefsid. So then you're allowed to help with the ribua. What do you do with the other animals? Sharkol Be'emes Machdisos Alabkaris. You just put the males and the females together and you let nature happen. But you cannot be a dayan participate. Torah Ein medayin lo b'shab basois. You cannot walk your animals on your field so that they'll have bowel movements there in order to fertilize your field. Can't do that on Shabbos. And lo b'yamim tovim. And lo b'chol shemoed. In bo melee and mutter. If they came by themselves, you don't have to chase them away, even though you're benefiting from the fertilizer. Son. You cannot help the Goyish shepherds to bring them to the fields. You can't give them a young boy to help them to go from place to place with the sheep. If the Goyish worker was a schir Shabbos, meaning you hired him for the week, schir chodesh, you hired him for the month, schir shana, hired him for a year, or schir shavua for 7 years, then Messiah noisoi. And they've been hired for a long period of time. It's not like you're doing a malach on a certain day, just on this day. So you can give them a nar to help them. Rebbe Yomer b'Shabbos b'toiva. You can't do it through payment. Beyond tov b'mezon, you can give them food. B'moyed chol moed b'schar. And Rav Yosef Hilchos a Rebbe. Allah is like Rebbe. Mishnah. V'chein mishay yeno b'sachabor. The grapes are in the pit, and Lucy, the Lucy show, right? She danced on the grapes already, and you have to take them out of that pit. But iru evil o oinus, he became an ovil, or some other unforeseen event occurred. Oshi tuhu, or his workers didn't show up. Zoylev v'goymer v'gav kedarko, the Rabbi Yossi. You can complete the job even without a shinui. Like that's how Rabbi Yossi holds. Rabbi Yudoimer oiselo limudim bishul shelo yachmitz. You just cover it so they don't become vinegar, but you can't do the work. Now, why did I have to be told the din by olives and a separate Mishnah with grapes? Tzricha. The Yeshman and Kamaisa, if I've only been told the case of the olives, maybe by Kom Rav Yossi. Dear Rav Yossi told me I could do without a shinui. Mishum de mishkan nafesh pseida. Olive oil was more expensive, at least at that time, than wine. Avar chama de nafesh pseida. Wine, which is, it's not such a big loss. Maybe oime made Rav Yehuda that you got to do it with a shinui. The Yeshman and Basraisa, and if you'd only told me the din about wine, by Yikom Rav Yehuda. Because it's not very valuable that Rabbi Yehuda there says just you can't do it with a sheet. You have to do it with a sheet. Maybe in the case of olives, aim a moed Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda would be moed that you can do without a sheet. Tzricha, you needed both cases. Who is the Tana who says that on a financial loss thing, you have to do a shinui? That's the look Rabbi Yossi. Right? Because Rabbi Yossi holds that you don't have to do a shinui. However, on Rabbi Yossi, halachic Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi says the halachic Rabbi Yossi that you can do a davar ha'avid without a shinui. Can you seal a barrel of beer? Or you rub them with a certain kind of pitch. Otherwise, it'll get absorbed by the walls of the barrel. Sinai is Rav Yosef, who was called Sinai because he was a baki. He knew a lot of Shas. Said halach Rav Yosef, and therefore you're allowed to do it. Eimer dam Rav Yosef b'chamra. Yeah, but maybe Rabbi Yossi only said that by wine. Maybe he didn't say it by beer. So why would he allow it by wine? Because you could lose money. Beer also you could lose. A barrel of beer that are 6 gallons that have been anointed with this schmear around it so that it won't be absorbed by the walls is more valuable than one that's 8 that hasn't been nimshach with whatever this coating was. So you see there is a financial issue regarding beer as well. Strange statement. Hilchos Chol Moed is the same as halachas of goyim. What do you mean? Lamai hilchos. Amrav Daniel bar Ketina Marab. Loimar shehin hakurois. They don't bring fruit. Meaning, ein lemedim zumizu. You can't learn halacha one to the other. Each one is a chiddush. Damar Shmuel, zoifsim kuzisa. A small jug can be smeared with tar, but vein zoifsim chavisa, but not a barrel. But Rav Dimi min Ardamer zoifsim chavisa vein zoifsim kusta. He said just the opposite. You can smear the barrel, but not a jug. Why? Mar chayish lifseda. Rav Dimi was concerned because otherwise it won't be worth as much. So he was matir to smear this kli gadol because it's otherwise it'd be a big financial loss. Umar chayish l'tircha, but the other one has a completely opposite halacha. Why? Because he's more concerned not about hefsid but about tircha. If it's more tircha, it's not permitted on Chol Moed. Amr Abaya Naktinon, you can take in your hands Hilchos Moed Hilchos Shabbos. Halachas of Moed are like Shabbos. Yesh men potra v'loser. Yesh men mutar l'chatchila. Just like on Shabbos, there are things that are completely permitted, but then there are things that are osur midrabanan. Same thing in Chol Moed. Ravuna chatztu lechatztu b'moada. Ravuna did a harvest on Chol Moed. You can grind flour Chol Moed if you're going to use it Chol Moed. But if it's not for the tzarach hamoed, you can't. And l'chura, if you're going to do a big harvest, it's not necessarily going to be used that moed. Davar she'avud b'moed, something that otherwise is going to get lost. Mutter lost is b'moed. Davar she'eno avud b'moed aser. And when is this all? B'medvar betlushim in akarka. These are all things that have already been cut from the ground. If something is still connected to the ground, even the whole thing is going to get lost. You're not allowed to do it. However, if on Chol Moed doesn't have to eat, you do everything, harvest, and you can sieve it, and you can sift it, and throw it in the wind, and do boirer and grind it. As long as you don't do it with an animal. But basically, how could Rav Huna harvest? It's connected to the ground. What you just quoted is a shitas yachid. We don't hold like that. The Tanya Klalam Rav Shimon Gamliel Mishum Rav Yosi. Davar tov from karka, something that's cut from the ground. Afilu mitzasay avad mutter. Even it would be a mild financial loss. You're allowed to do it Chol Moed. Hamachover lekarka, afilu kulo avud aser. You cannot do it. It would be aser even if it's all lost. But that's only the sheet of Rabbi Yosi. We'll see. Rabbi Yosi, Yodush Nami Beporos. Rabbi Yosi holds you can do everything without a shinui. So why would you exclude using cows? Rabbi Yosi. So this shows that this whole price is Rabbi Yosi. But this halach of Rabbi yosi, that you can't harvest l'chatchila on Chol Hamoed, we don't paskin that way. Shulchan Aruch says, "Ein liktzur sada b'chol hamoed b'she'enu nifsad." If there's no financial loss, we don't do ktsira. Im yamoid adlach, as long as it stays until after moed. Aval ein lo malecha, but if he doesn't have to eat, or it's a kolam lachas b'sada kedarkam, you can do everything without a shinui until he has grain and flour in his house. As long as l'vach yodesh b'paros. Back to the Gemara. Torah Rabbanan. Toichanin b'moed l'tzarech hamoed. You can grind on Chol Hamoed for the purpose of the moed. For shaloi l'tzarech hamoed, if you want to do, you're grinding to use after the moed, that you can't do aser. However, im tochan v'hoiser is a mutter. If you grind it and there happened to be left over, that's fine. You can use it after yontiv. Same thing. Koitis and eitzim b'moed l'tzarech hamoed. You can cut trees down for Chol Hamoed. But you can't do it if you're cutting them for after the moed. But if you cut for Chol Hamoed and you end up with extra, the hoiser is a mutter. Matilin sheikha b'moed l'tzarech hamoed. You can prepare beer for moed. Shalol l'tzarech hamoed aser. V'mhitil v'hoiser is a mutter. V'vat shlo yarim. You can't pull a trick and prepare extra. V'riminu, matilin sheikha b'moed l'tzarech hamoed. V'shalol l'tzarech hamoed aser. Echad sheikha tomorrow v'echad sheikha tza'or v'av b'sheyesh lo yashan. If he has old stuff, marim v'shoyz b'nachadish, you can make more and you can be marim. So it's machlekes tanoim whether you can be marim, you could trick it. Tanoim, the Tanya, ein marim b'kak, Rabbi Yossi Berman, marimim. Mutter litchon kemak l'tzarech hamoed. The moed l'tzarech hamoed ein l'tzarech l'tzantzin, you can make a lot. Avalo yarim l'chatchila. But if you have old flour or beer, you shouldn't trick and make new ones. But if you did it, you're mutter to benefit from it. Rav also harvested Chol Hamoed. Shama Shmuel Ikbid. Shmuel heard about it, was upset. Lema Shmuel Kechidos Firle. What do you mean? We just pointed out that the bandoma that Aserd is a Das Yachid. So Shmuel holds like a Das Yachid. Lo, Chatzor the Chiti Havid, the law of it pasid. It was wheat, and you could keep wheat until after. It wasn't the financial loss, so it shouldn't have been done. So why did Rav do it? Rav my time of Rachi, because he didn't have to eat. Ushmuel lo simyumi kamei. They didn't tell Shmuel that Rav didn't have to eat. Or Shmuel thought that maybe Rav is not Choshev, he should be machmar himself. Rav Yehuda Nisi Nafik B'chur Mesud de Medusha. Rav Yehuda went out on Shabbos with a seal, a ring seal, which was on his ring. V'ishti maya de'achin kapela arma. He drank warmed up water that was warmed up by a goyish chef. So Shama Rabami Ikbid. Rabami heard about both of these things and was upset. Rav Yosef, my time Ikbid. Imishum chumras de medusha. You talk about he went off with this ring. Hatanya hashirin anizami v'tabos harein kachol hakelim atam b'chatzar. You can carry those. Those are like garments. Imishum deishti ma'im da'achim kapela arma. It's bishul akum. So there, we learn this in the Tzur Rabbanon. Any food that can be eaten raw, if a goy cooks it, there's no bishul akum. So, for example, carrots. If a goy cooks carrots, you can eat it because you can eat carrots raw. Water can be drunk without cooking it. So, therefore, there's no bishul akum by water.
What about sushi?
Sushi, there's no bishul by sushi.
Exactly, so I'm saying. So sushi, the herring would be good, sushi would be good. All these things you could get from
No, we're talking about bishul. We're talking about you're not allowed to eat from something that a nochri cooked.
In other words, they could cook there. They could cook sushi because they could cook fish because basically you can eat fish. You can eat sushi
Today. Enechanami. Well, enechanami. By the way, bishul usually means with water. So enechanami, it probably didn't. The halacha probably changed because in the old days they didn't eat fish raw. Now we eat fish raw. So I think we didn't read something about that in the Tzurba about fish. I think there was a footnote there that enechanami. If it's a fish that you can eat raw, there'd be no bishul akum because of this principle.
I had a question. I was thinking about, do you think a robot would be considered like a bishul akum?
No, a robot is not in Nochri. Ein osir mishum bishul nochrim ela dover sheinu nechal k'moshu chai.
Right.
It's got to be also something important that would go up on Shulchan Malachim.
Well, today for sure sushi would go,
Hakolafi Amakam Vazman. Wow. So that's very specifically Shulchan Aruch says Hakolafi Amakam Vazman. So in a Chanami, things change. So by sushi fish, it's changed. Ein bo mishul bishul nachrim. So the shaila was, why was he makpid? Adam choshev shiny. Since he was not Adam choshev, he thought maybe he should be machman himself more than other people. Amrav Chananel Amarav koitzitz Adam dekel b'moed. You can trim a palm tree on kol hamoed. Aval pishen etzorach el nesor shelo. You only need the branches. Layet Allah Abai. Abai wasn't happy. Whoever does this. Ravashi Avalei Abba Bishalniya. He had a forest. He went to trim it. You hold like that sheet of Koitisodam Dekal Moed Pishan and Tzrachel and the Sarshalo? Holayet Ale Abaya. Abaya was upset. I never heard that Abaya was upset. In fact, I don't hold of that. I hold it's permitted. However, when he was out in the forest and he was chopping the wood, Ishtamit Narga, the handle flew off. Boiler mystical almost cut his foot off. So Shavke Vahadar also. So he saw there was a simon raw, and he changed his mind that it's probably because he went against the Abaya. Rav Yudah Sharla Me'akar Kitna. He permitted to pull out flax plants. That's kitno. Lemiktal kshusas watercress. Ulemeakar shumshir sesame. Only Rav Yibishma kitna chazi lechafifa. You could do the kol moed. You can cover it with things. Kshusa chazi l'shek kshusa is good for beer. Ela shum shemi lemay chazi. What do you do with the sesame seeds? Chazi lenazi this way. It's good for the oil that's inside of it. Rav Yanei Avaleyahu Pardesa Demata Zina B'chol Demoed. Rav Yanei had an orchard, and the time to pick the fruit, Pletzlach happened right on Chol HaMoed. Cut fei, and he took the fruit off because he couldn't. If he delayed, it'd be a financial loss. L'shana Shayut Kul Ha'amo Pardesa L'chol Demoed. However, next year, the people that saw him do it, they all did it in their orchards. So Avkar Rav Yanai L'Pardesa Ushata. So Rav Yanai was mafkir all the money that he made the previous year, because what he did led to a michshol for the other people that they learned from him to be mekel. For him, he had it that year because it was a hefsid. But next year, people didn't. They did it even though it wasn't a hefsid. Mishnah. Machnis odem peiros b'nei haganovim. On Chol HaMoed, you can bring your fruits in from the field into your house because you're afraid of thieves. You can take your flax out of the flax pool so it shouldn't get lost. You can't plan that this is not going to happen in Chol HaMoed. In fact, if you plan it that way, it's got to be thrown away. It's got to do it privately. Rav Yosef Rav Yosef had lumber. Eilinu b'mama, he put him into his house during the daytime. Why are you doing the daytime? You should do it at nighttime. I'm like, no, tzina da'ani imamu. Tzina is daytime because kivin de belela boy gavri yiseri. Number one, at night you need more people because it's harder to see. So number one, it's more public. You got to work with candlelight and fire. It becomes less betzina. So avshamilsa, then it would be a marasayan more. You could take your flax out of the pool. Let's say he planned to do it cholamoid, which we said in the Mishnah, yoivdu. It's got to be thrown away. What if the guy died? Do we knas the heirs? Do the children who didn't do anything, do they have to lose out? Okay, we'll save the answer for tomorrow.